Hello, dear viewers. I am a global nationalist. I support nationalism in my country, India, and in all countries around the globe. Today, I'm going to be talking about nationalism in a South Asian country, that is Sri Lanka. I'm going to be talking about how Sri Lanka can overcome this crisis using its nationalism. Let's begin. Well, about Sri Lanka, I'll first just give a brief description of it. It's a country that is a very ancient culture. Uh, Basically, writing goes back till about 25 BC. That's when the first Buddhist writings are found. But even before then, there's evidence of settlement and culture like 2000, at least since 1000 BC, there has been uh, a civilization there. And it's very closely connected to India. It has much of the same culture. Buddhism, which is the predominant religion in Sri Lanka, comes from India, and also um, now it is a democratic republic, a democratic socialist republic, and it has an elected president and an elected prime minister who comes from the parliament. How it works is that the presidential elections happen whereby an individual from any party can stand and he is voted for on the basis of proportional representation. Then, after he wins, a few months later, the parliamentary elections happen. And once those elections happen, the president appoints a member of the winning party as the prime minister. Now, what has happened in Sri Lanka is basically a crisis of economics, a debt crisis where it's taken too many loans from different countries and people, such as China. It's taken loans from the IMF and is now unable to repay them. And it doesn't have enough resources to provide for its own people and has now defaulted on its debt for the first time in its inflation has increased. It has not enough medical supplies for its people. It's basically the worst economic crisis in Sri Lanka's history. And in this video, I want to talk about how nationalism in Sri Lanka can be used to unite the people and help them overcome this crisis. So these are the causes of the crisis. First, it's the tax cuts and money creation. Now, I'm a libertarian, so I support tax cuts, especially these, which was resulted in 33.5% decline in registered taxpayers, which I don't think which is too much, but I think the terms such as reducing VAT to 8%, reducing corporate tax from 28 to 24%, and uh, the abolition of the pay as you earn tax and 2% not nation building tax. Um, these are good cuts because VAT would have reduced the amount people spent for goods and services, and corporate tax would have allowed corporations to spend and increase their hiring rates. But the problem was that this resulted in natural loss of revenue. And what the government should have done was it should have also reduced spending and cut out some of its welfare programs, the ones that were not essential for people. But how it didn't do that, and it continued printing money from the central bank in record numbers and ignored advice from the International Monetary Fund to stop printing money and instead hike interest rates and raise taxes while cutting spending. Now, so this is a problem. If they did not continue spending their money, the value of their rupee would not have gone down, which is what happened, unfortunately, which can be seen here. The central bank attempted to maintain the LKR pegged to the US dollar at 200 LKR to the dollar, but the unofficial market value of the LKR was exceeding 248 to the dollar. Foreign workers who were remitting money s- could not do it, did not want to do it through official channels. They did it through unofficial channels because they no longer thought the central bank was capable of getting their money to whoever the recipient was. I don't really understand why they chose unofficial channels. And this caused Sri Lankan banks to run out of foreign currency and foreign remittances and to crash with a 61% reduction in official remittances in January 22nd, 2022. Then external debt increased. Sri Lanka's foreign debt more than doubled between 2010 and 2020. Foreign debt was 42% of GDP in 2019. It rose to 119% of its GDP in 2021. And a few days ago, in the last week, Sri Lanka defaulted on its debts because they do not have enough uh, foreign currency to repay them. Here it shows that by the end of 2022, the country is due to pay $4 billion to debtors, whereas in April 2022, the government reserves amounted to only $2.3 billion. Now, a large part of the blame goes to China for giving loans to Sri Lanka that they knew that Sri Lanka could not pay. External debt owed to China was officially 10% of the total debt as of April 2021, though some officials say that China's total lending was much higher. But it is not only due to China, it is also due to debt acquired from others, such as 47% of Sri Lanka's external debt is owed to international capital markets, while 22% is held by multilateral development banks, followed by Japan having 10%. Now, this it cannot mean that both China and Japan are equal because, as it says, their unofficial amount that China has lent to its, which is to state-owned enterprises and the central bank, is not included in the official count. So China has lent more to Sri Lanka than Japan. So yeah, these are the causes. Also, the lack of tourism. Tourism was contributing 5.6% of the GDP in 2018, but by 2020 it dropped to 0.8%. And this is because of the COVID lockdown, which prevent which banned tourists. So, and the other problem is that the agricultural crisis in April 2021, the president Gotabaya Rajapaksa announced that Sri Lanka will only allow organic farming and ban or inorganic fertilizers and agrochemicals based fertilizers. The drop in tea production as a result of the fertilizer ban resulted in economic losses of around $425 million and created a 20% drop in rice production within the first 6 months alone, reversing previously achieved self-sufficiency in rice production, and the country was forced to import rice at a cost of $450 million. This is absolutely terrible. Should not have happened. They should not have forced um, farmers to ban fertilizers and force them into organic farming. That should have been the choice of the farmers. Another cause is due to the Russo-Ukrainian war. It hurt them because Russia is the second biggest market to Sri Lanka in tea exports, and Sri Lanka's tourism sector is heavily reliant upon these two nations, as most of the tourist arrivals are from Russia and Ukraine. And this has put a halt to the path of economic recovery of Sri Lanka, with both tea and tourism sector have been hit hard. Now about nationalism. In Sri Lanka, there are two types of nationalism: Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism and Sri Lankan Tamil nationalism. I'll first talk about Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism. It is a political ideology which combines a focus upon Sinhalese culture and ethnicity with an emphasis upon Theravada Buddhism, which is the main majority belief system of most of the Sinhalese in Sri Lanka. It mostly revived in reaction to the colonization of Sri Lanka by the British Empire and became increasingly assertive in the years following the independence of the country. Sinhalese nationalism has generally been influenced by the contents of Mahavamsa, the major Puranic chronicle written in the 6th century. The Mahavamsa states that Lord Buddha made 3 visits to Sri Lanka in which he rids the island of forces inimical to Buddhism and instructs deities to protect the ancestors of the Sinhalese to enable the establishment and flourishing of Buddhism in Sri Lanka. The myth has led to the widely held Sinhalese belief that the country is Sehadipa and Dhamadipa, the island ennobled to preserve and propagate religion, Buddhism. So Sinhalese basically believe that this land, Sri Lanka, is their own land and it is made for the followers of Buddha. And so this ideology is very religious. It uses religion to as a way to identify the people of the country. And the Mahavamsa basically portrays the Tamil King Elara and the army of Cholas who came from South India as invaders, and it describes the account of the Sri Lankan Buddhist warrior King Dutugamunnu and his army, which was supported by up to 500 Buddhist monks, battling and defeating the Tamil king. And when Dutugamunnu laments over the thousands he has killed, the 8 arhats who came to console him replied that no real sin has been committed to him because he has only killed Tamil unbelievers, Ellara and his people, who are no better than beasts. This is something that I find hard to believe that because I don't think Buddhism, any Buddhist text would say that a group of people are not human. I think Buddha always valued everyone, viewed every person equal. I think this was mainly just that those people were the invaders, the enemies of the Sri Lankans, and so they must defeat them. I think that is a better interpretation. And so I think that's how Sri Lankans should interpret this action by their king Dutugamunnu. He defeated an army of invaders, but they shouldn't view the Tamil people as subhuman, as beastly, as if they're not allowed in Sri Lanka, because that leads to Sri Lankan Tamil nationalism. This is the conviction of the Sri Lankan Tamil people, who are a minority ethnic group, that they have the right to constitute an independent or autonomous political community. This idea has not always existed. This began during the era of British rule during the 19th century, as Tamil Hindu revivalists tried to counter Protestant missionary activity. Now, this I support. Missionary activity is very harmful. It's done often uh, discre- dishonestly and discreetly and turns the native followers of the religion against their own people and divides the community. So I think this is still going on even after the colonial era. So I think Christian missionaries should stop proselytizing people in Sri Lanka and should simply practice their religion of Christianity on their own. The and then this began with uh, the in 1921 when the Reformed Legislative Council, which was based on principles of communal representation, uh, they had an election for this council, and the Tamil political party was called the Ceylon All Ceylon Tamil Congress, also called the ACTC. In the years leading to Sri Lankan independence, political tension began to develop between the majority Sinhalese and minority Tamil communities as the ACTC citing the possibility of the majority Sinhalese adopting a dominant posture, pushed for 50-50 representation in parliament. This policy would allot half the seats in parliament to the Sinhalese majority and half to the minority communities, Ceylon Tamils, Indian Tamils, Muslims, and others. After independence in 1948, the ACTC decided to merge with the United National Party, which was the Sinhalese party at that time. Like, not officially a Sinhalese party, was supported by the Sinhalese majority. Uh, the, the UNP also officially claimed to represent the Tamil people. This move was not supported by half of the ACTC members and resulted in a split. One half of the party decided to merge with UNP, and the other half decided to leave the party altogether from a new Tamil party called the Federal Party. So this is how it began, where some parts members of the Tamil community trying to be moderate and work with the Sinhalese parties, while the more radicals continued to aim for a separate state. So, for my closing remarks, is what I want to say. There are two different types of nationalism in Sri Lanka, as I've said: Sinhala Buddhist nationalism and Tamil nationalism. Although Tamil nationalism can be considered more as Tamil separatism, so if a uh, common ground can be found for both these ideologies, such that Sinhalese and Tamils can live together in peace and as a united n- gr- nation of Sri Lankans, then I think that will help reduce the fault lines in Sri Lankan society and help them work on furthering the cause of the nation itself. How this can be done, I think I have some ideas. The Sinhalese Buddhists should understand that their cult, religion, and their language is the major culture in Sri Lanka and it should be protected. And I think it's right that the government be a Buddhist country so that it can protect its main culture. But they should also recognize that others in their country who are not Buddhists or Sinhalese should also be treated as equal citizens and that they should be able to practice their religion and speak their languages freely. And I think they're moving into that, especially now with Mahinda Rajapaksa not in as a prime minister anymore. But unfortunately, Gotabaya Rajapaksa is still there, and I think he should resign because he has completely failed in handling this economic crisis, and also because people are protesting for his removal. A new person should take the position as president so that Sri Lanka can truly go into a new direction. And yeah, I think by uniting the Tamils and Sri Sinhalese, that Sri Lanka can grow and leave aside the past divides. Also, the economic problems can be resolved by focusing on growth. Right now, they're focusing on giving people, continuing to give freebies to people, which is what they've been doing. They're also now cutting down uh, water supplies, electricity, and getting people to ration. While these are temporary measures, I think that they're not long-term solutions. I think that the government should remove as many restrictions as it can so that people are able to live freely and make their own decisions and that they're not feeling oppressed by the government, and so that the markets can find some equilibrium, a price equilibrium for their products so that inflation reduces. If they can reduce subsidies to companies, then this can, uh, and farmers and other state-owned enterprises, then this can cause these suppliers to reduce their prices, because one of the reasons why I think they're increasing their prices not just because of the up growth of demand after the pandemic lockdown was removed, but also because of the financial support from the government. They felt that they have a way to increase their prices, but if they don't have that support, then they'll have to reduce their prices. so that they can uh, come to some equilibrium with their consumers. And as far as the tax cuts go, I think that that should remain, but they should reduce spending and stop giving free electricity, free water to people, freebies in essential in general, so that they can save money and stop printing money because that causes inflation. And as far as their debt, I think I understand that they've only defaulted on their debt for this year and for the short term. I think there are still some debts that are long term that they've not defaulted on. I think that's good. They should try to uh, grow now, remove economic restrictions, allow capitalism to grow in the country so that the government's taxes increase so that it can pay back the loans it's taken. I think that will help them. And yeah, but ultimately, I am not an expert in economics. My background is in law, but this is my humble suggestions. At the end of the day, I hope that Sri Lankans can somehow stay united and stay together so that they can overcome this terrible crisis that they're in. I want to end this video by wishing good luck to Sri Lanka. Well, if I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to see other videos about South Asian countries, click here. If you want to see my previous video, click here. If you want to see the sources I used for this video, click the links in the description below. Thank you for watching. Vande Mataram.